The lowest scoring season in Chicago Blackhawks history has finally come to a close. And on today's episode, I'll talk about Kyle Davidson's exit interview and all the Blackhawks prospects, including Connor Bedard, that are playing in this year's World Championship.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at JackBushman2, and make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey, so that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Also, just a quick reminder to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're tuning into the audio version of today's episode, make sure that you're constantly downloading all of those latest episodes. You can rate and review the show as well if you like what you're listening to on a daily basis. And last but certainly not least, I got to let you all know that today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Put on your game face and download Monopoly Go right now for free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Happy Monday. Hope everyone's weekend treated them well. And finally, the most painful season, arguably, in Chicago Blackhawks franchise history has now finally come to a close following Thursday's matchup against the Los Angeles Kings. Pretty painful finish for the Chicago Blackhawks as well, right? I mean, battled so hard to overcome that 3-1 deficit in the third period. Actually got off to a decent start considering how badly they were outplayed in the opening 20 minutes. They held a 1-0 lead. A beautiful move by Lucas Reichel. I think it was his fifth goal of the season. Nifty little maneuver there. Put the Blackhawks ahead 1-0, but then the Kings roared back in the second, took over the game as they could have done in the first had Peter Mrazek not made some big-time saves. They come out and tie the game 1-1 early and then score twice in a minute and 20 span to take a commanding 3-1 lead going into the third. The Blackhawks were outshot 25-7 through the opening 40. It was not looking good in terms of their comeback chances, but something in the second intermission must have sparked them because they came out early on in the third period with some fire, and we saw Tyler Johnson score on the power play to cut the deficit to 3-2, and then Landon Slaggert, a great battle, showing some great effort to win a battle and force a turnover that leads to a Joey Anderson breakaway. Suddenly, the Blackhawks have tied the game 3-3, and then out of nowhere, Ryan Donato with a redirect off of a Mackenzie Entwistle shot from the point. The Blackhawks out of nowhere take a 4-3 lead, and it's like, okay, after all the pain that we've gone through this season, after a painful first 40 minutes in this game, at least we can wrap up the season with a nice little bow on top. But then tragedy struck late. Philip Kurashev with a really tough accidental delay of game penalty, flipping the puck out of play as he was exiting his own zone. Clearly not his intention. The puck just seemed to bounce on him. The Kings managed to tie the game with the extra attacker. And then just 6 seconds into overtime, Adrian Kempe skates down the ice and pots the game winner to give the Kings the 4-3 OT victory. That secures them in the third and final playoff spot in the Pacific Division. I know the playoffs have already started, and I apologize not getting my playoff picks out before the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I promise that's coming on the episode tomorrow, and I have not changed my selections. I pinky promise, even though the playoffs are already underway. But yeah, a little bit of a heartbreaker for the Blackhawks. I thought at least they were going to finish on a high note, but nope, come up so short. Kind of the story of the entire season, and that puts them at 23-53-6 for the 2023-2024 campaign, the second worst record in the NHL. That gives them a 13.5% chance of landing Macklin Celebrini in the 2024 NHL draft. The draft lottery, not all that far away, Blackhawks fans, May 8th, so it's quietly starting to creep up here, but yeah, tough season for the Blackhawks, folks. To everyone who's still tuned in until the very end, until that last game against the Los Angeles Kings that, started at 9:40 p.m. Central Time, goes into OT, winds up finishing right around midnight here in the Chicagoland area, only for another painful Chicago Blackhawks loss. If you stuck with it throughout the course of the season, if you stuck with me here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, let me say first off, I appreciate you very much. And I'm right there with you. I know how tough this season was for all of us Blackhawks fans. And to me personally, it didn't just feel like this season. Yeah, it was absolutely brutal. And the Blackhawks were terrible offensively, couldn't do anything on the power play for 3/4 of the season. A lot of injuries that they had to deal with, right? Arvid Soderblom as the backup goaltender obviously didn't have the year that we were looking for out of him. There were a lot of negatives, but I feel like it's a culmination, honestly, of what's gone down the last couple of years now. It wasn't just this season alone for me. It's just how bad of hockey the Chicago Blackhawks have been playing for these last couple years, but this season in particular is the fewest points in franchise history since the NHL switched to an 82-game schedule, and the Blackhawks only won a whopping 7 games on the road, 7 for 41 away from the United Center this season. Just simply not good enough. And talking about simply not good enough, I was very happy to hear Blackhawks general manager Kyle Davidson shared the same feelings and the same sentiment when having his exit interview over the weekend at Fifth Third Arena. It was clear based on that interview by Kyle Davidson that he's not happy with what the Blackhawks did this season, right? And I know they dealt with a lot of things, the injuries, like I just mentioned, and all that good stuff, but this was an underwhelming season for the Chicago Blackhawks, and it's not like I had crazy expectations for them. I still expected them to be a bottom 10 team in the league. I didn't think they were going to be competing for a Stanley Cup playoff spot. That just wasn't reasonable, but I didn't think we'd get something worse than what we saw last year. I thought we certainly would get improvements based on the additions that they made, bringing back Athanasiou, Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, based on all those things, I thought this was going to be a better Blackhawks team this year. And I know there were some things out of their control that led to this worst record, but the lack of consistency was really frustrating. The lack of offensive output made me want to rip my hair out from time to time. There were just stretches this year where the Blackhawks couldn't do anything to score a goal and clearly were getting outplayed basically night in and night out. So it was disappointing that they weren't able to put together some progress this season, but it was nice to hear that Kyle Davidson kind of put his foot in the ground and say, look, this is unacceptable. We can't have another season like this next year. We have to start showing signs of progress. And I really believe it is that time in the rebuild for the Blackhawks to take that next step. And honestly, for the first time in his tenure as Blackhawks head coach, it's kind of time to see some things out of Luke Richardson. He's gotten the benefit of the doubt because of the rosters the Blackhawks have iced under his helm. But next year, I think, is going to be a time where we need to start seeing some more wins out of this Blackhawks team, and they just need to be playing better. So it was nice to hear, refreshing to hear that Kyle Davidson feels the same way. And I don't know if the Blackhawks, I don't think they're going to be going after the big fish in free agency this year, but it sure sounds like they're going to want to be making some pieces and making some changes to just make improvements for the roster next year. And that's music to my ears because it's time. It's time. With all the losing they've been doing, they've been really testing the fan base. It's something that I've been saying a lot here on this show. I feel like the fans are as frustrated as ever with the Chicago Blackhawks over the last 20 years, basically. And with the way Chicago sports are going as a whole right now, there's just not a lot of upside. And the fans are really getting tested. I just think it's really, really crucial that the Blackhawks make strides in the right direction next year. So, yeah, again, nice to hear Kyle Davidson feeling the same way. Just the Blackhawks can't be a bottom feeder again next year. So hopefully we'll be getting some better hockey to watch along with Connor Bedard, some more excitement out there because there was a lack of that this year, that's for sure. And I'll be talking more about all of the exit interviews on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Make sure to stay tuned for that. I got some other things that I want to talk about on today's show, but certainly we'll be getting into all the players' thoughts and feelings on how the season went and all the question marks for the future of the Blackhawks. It's going to be an interesting offseason. They got a lot of RFAs, some UFAs, some tough decisions that they're going to have to make. So I'll be breaking all of that down along with giving out Blackhawks end of the season awards. I think that'll be coming on tomorrow's episode as well. So make sure to stay tuned for that and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already to hear all that good stuff that I'll be talking about later on throughout the course of the season. All right, there is kind of my quick synopsis on a painful loss to tie a bow on the 2023-2024 season. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk quickly about all the Blackhawks players that are expected to take part in the 2024 World Championship. But first, I got to talk to you all about, I thought that was Monopoly Go. That's Monopoly Go. I'm 0 for 2 on that, and I apologize, Monopoly Go, because this game is excellent. We've all been there, too, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime, and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can do enough to pull away with that win, and that's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime and with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, and charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and win tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go right now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Segment 2, now that the Blackhawks season has officially come to a close and we know they'll not be competing in the Stanley Cup playoffs once again, unfortunately. Hopefully that's a statement that I won't be making for too long because, boy, do I miss the Blackhawks. Playing in this time of the year and watching playoff hockey get underway over the weekend, it's like, man, it's been too long. Officially since 2017 when the Blackhawks were swept out of the first round by the Nashville Predators. Of course, they got a little bit of a taste in the COVID postseason in 2020 when they bested the Edmonton Oilers in that best of 5 series and then went on to get mollywopped by the Vegas Golden Knights in the next round. But yeah, it's been too long since the Blackhawks have actually played meaningful hockey. I don't expect them to get back to that point next season, unfortunately, but I do think 2025, 2026, I'm banking on that that's the year that the Blackhawks are going to be getting back into playing some hockey during the springtime of the year. But with the Blackhawks not playing during the springtime this season, one cool little thing that does go on that we'll see a couple of their players take part in is the IIHF World Championship, which kicks off on Friday, May 10th. So just a couple of weeks away and is going to be held in Prague this year. And it sounds like we're going to get at least 4 or 5 Blackhawks players taking part here in the World Championship. But for those who are unfamiliar, a little bit of a breakdown as to how it works. A lot of players who don't qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs end up playing in the World Championships, even sometimes when guys lose, when their teams lose in the opening round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, they'll go and play. But it's nothing like, the Olympics or even like in terms of like the quality of competition, the World Juniors, where you have the best of the best representing their countries. It's not quite similar to that, but you do still get some good talent. And it sounds like this year in particular, the United States and Canada, at least, are going to be very well represented by NHL players. I'll get there in just a second. But as far as the groups go, there's 16 teams total taking part in the tournament. 8 will qualify for the medaling round after the first handful of days, and they're split up into 2 groups. The first group is Canada, Finland, Switzerland. Canada and Finland, by the way, are numbers 1 and 2 in the rankings in the same group together this year. Canada, Finland, Switzerland, Czechia, the host country, Denmark, Norway, Austria, and Great Britain. And then Group B, the United States, also have Germany, Sweden, Slovakia, Latvia, France, Kazakhstan, and Poland. And I mentioned the tournament gets underway on Friday, May 10th. The playoffs will be held from May 23rd to May 26th, with the top 4 teams from each of those 2 groups qualifying for the quarterfinals. So 8 of the 16 will reach, 4 from Group A, 4 from Group B. And as I just mentioned, sounds like there's going to be a lot of NHL quality players taking part in the World Championships this year, which, it's always a little bit spotty. You'll get a couple studs for, the United States, Canada, Sweden, Finland. When Russia was allowed to take part in this tournament, you get some good guys for them as well. But it sounds like there's going to be more than ever this year, according to Andy Strickland of Bally Sports Midwest, who does a lot of stuff for the St. Louis Blues. Yeah, he said both Team USA and Canada will be represented well at this year's World Championship. And for the Blackhawks, most notably, Connor Bedard confirmed in his exit interviews over the weekend that he is going to be playing for Team Canada. So, just because of that in and alone of itself, there's going to be a lot more eyeballs on the tournament this year. And Canada is coming off of a gold medal at the 2023 World Championship last year, their second gold medal in the past 3 years since COVID-19. So, yeah, going to be cool to see Connor Bedard and who else possibly could be playing for Team Canada. No official confirmation yet. Andy Strickland reported that Jordan Binnington sounds like he'll be the goaltender for Team Canada, but not as many official names that have leaked for Team Canada as there have been for the United States. Sounds like Team USA sure is gearing up to give it its best run ever at a gold medal. They've never won gold in the World Championship, believe it or not. And obviously the United States, hockey in the United States has been growing over the last handful of years, right? We're seeing the United States World Juniors team win the gold medal and be better than ever on that front. And I think there's just more American-based stars and big names in the game than there ever has been. The development of the game in the United States has been huge over the last 15 to 20 years, and it looks like we're starting to see that. Seth Jones and Alex Vlasic sound like both of them are going to be playing for the United States at the World Championship. He didn't play for them last year, but in the 2022 edition of the tournament, he was the captain for the red, white, and blue. So we'll see if he'll be donning the C as he goes back to represent them in Prague this year. And it will be fun to see if he's going to be paired up with Alex Vlasic along the way. Those two played a ton together this season, were the true shutdown pairing for the Blackhawks all year long, and established a lot of chemistry with one another, and clearly were the best duo on defense for the Blackhawks this year. So will be interesting to see if they're going to be cut together. However, a potential wrinkle in that plan is it sounds like Zach Werenski from the Columbus Blue Jackets is going to be playing for the United States as well. And he and Seth Jones, of course, teammates for a long time with the Columbus Blue Jackets, played on the same D pairing as one another. So we'll see if it's going to be Jones and Vlasic once again, or if Zach Werenski could potentially sneak in there on the top blue line for the red, white, and blue as well. But it sounds like Johnny Gaudreau could be there, Cole Caulfield, Trevor Zegras, Luke Hughes, Brady Tkachuk, Shane Pinto. Like, there's a lot of good talent, it sounds, that's going to be heading to Prague for the United States this year. So surely will be a lot of fun to see the United States go for their gold medal bid this season. Hopefully be able to get the job done. Would be super cool if they're able to win gold at the World Juniors and at the World Championships. As I mentioned, Connor Bedard for Team Canada is going to do everything in his power to make sure that isn't the case as Canada looks to go back-to-back. But also Philip Kurashev looks like he's going to be playing for Team Switzerland as well. And Peter Mrazek could be playing for Team Czechia, the host country this year. Kind of got leaked in the exit interviews by Connor Bedard because he said him and Kurashev agreed their number one goal at the World Championship is to score on Peter Mrazek, which I think is pretty funny. But also, of course, lets us know Kurashev is going to be playing for Switzerland, barring anything crazy happening. Same with Peter Mrazek in net for Czechia, which he certainly deserves to represent his country after what he did for the Blackhawks. Don't want to give too big of a spoiler alert here, but he was just monumental in any success that the Hawks had this season. It was because Peter Mrazek was having a solid night in net, absolutely deserving of this opportunity. We'll see if there's going to be any more Blackhawks players taking part in the World Juniors, but we know for sure Connor Bedard, Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic, Philip Kurashev, and Peter Mrazek are going to be taking the trip to Prague. We'll see who else is going to be joining them. If we get any updates on that matter, I'll make sure to bring it up and let you all know right here on Locked On Blackhawks. All right, there is everything to know as we're just a couple of weeks away from the start of the 2024 IIHF World Championship. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, I do want to speak for a few moments about the looming decision over Ryan Greene's head. But first, I got to talk to you all about Policygenius. I got the right got the right banner there. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. And some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace that helps you save time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting right here, right now, today. Go and talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the entire process step by step, comparing quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to help get you the lowest price. And Policygenius is a trustworthy marketplace with thousands of five-star reviews on both Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. You can go and check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head on over to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL, or you can easily go and click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes today and see how much you could save right here, right now. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff really does help me grow the show on YouTube. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, before I wrap things up here, I do want to talk a little bit about Blackhawks 2022 second round pick, the 57th overall selection a couple of years ago, and Ryan Greene and his decision that is still looming as to what is going to be the next step of his career. Greene just wrapped up the second season of his collegiate career with Boston University, another really sound year for them, tallying 12 goals and 24 assists for 36 points in 40 games, used mostly as the Terriers' second line center behind Macklin Celebrini, the man that's going to go number 1 overall in just a couple of months' time, while also being utilized in the bumper role on the Terriers' top power play unit. But unfortunately, like Frank Nazar, we saw Ryan Greene have his season come to a close just short of of BU's championship dreams in the Frozen Four, as they lost to Boston College in the Frozen Four game. And like Frank Nazar as well, that now leaves a question mark over Ryan Greene's head as to what is going to come next. Is he going to forego the rest of his eligibility in college in order to turn pro? Or is he going to come back to Boston University for his junior season? Maybe, like I referenced with Frank Nazar as well, maybe having those feelings of some unfinished business a little bit, considering how good BU was all year long, ranked inside the top 5 basically from start to finish. Macklin Celebrini was must-see TV, leading the country in goals and in points. He was electric. And to come up that short and to lose to a rival like Boston College, I'm sure that had to be a tough pill to swallow for Ryan Greene and the rest of that roster. And I do wonder how that is going to impact his decision. And we don't have anything as of now as to this point. And just like Frank Nazar, Ryan Greene had the opportunity to, right when his sophomore season ended, he could have gone and signed his entry-level deal with the Chicago Blackhawks and could have joined them for the last couple of games of the season. As I said, like we saw with Frank Nazar, but he's still, it sounds like, weighing his options. And it sounds like the Blackhawks, I haven't seen this in quotes or anything, but it feels like the Blackhawks are allowing Ryan Greene to kind of choose what he wants to do in his next step, like they did for Frank Nazar. Whereas with some other guys, it feels like they kind of want to force their hand a little bit and to get them to turn pro, to get their hands on them. It doesn't feel like there's kind of that pressure coming for the Blackhawks, in my opinion, here on Ryan Greene. But it is an interesting decision. As far as what I think Ryan Greene should do, he's still only 20 years old. He's going to be turning 21 in October, right before the start of the season next year. Yeah, he could go and turn pro and join the Rockford IceHogs to get a little bit of a taste of what pro hockey is like. And I honestly think that that's probably what the Blackhawks would prefer if I had to guess. Like I said, I think they just want to get their hands on these guys, get them into their organization, be able to have a closer eye on them and be hands-on with their development a little bit more than when they're off at college or playing for a junior program or whatever the situation may be. But I personally think going back to Boston University isn't a terrible option for Ryan Greene. Going back to be a junior, to be an upperclassman, probably going to be one of the big-time leaders for that team if he does return. And if I had to guess, he'd probably wear a letter for them next year, while also getting a really good opportunity. I know BU has good prospects coming in and year out, but after being the third-line center as a freshman, being a near point-per-game guy there, and getting elevated a little bit at the end of his freshman campaign to a top 6 role, and then seeing what he did this year, being on the top power play unit, being the second line center right behind Macklin Celebrini all season long, I think it would set him up nicely to go and be the top line center for the Terriers next season. I know recruiting and who's coming back could kind of change all of that, but it seems kind of like that would be the transition, the next step for Ryan Greene in that program. And I just think that would be a really good opportunity for him. And considering all the prospects the Blackhawks are going to be having in Rockford next year, even at the forward group, like Paul Ludwinski, I think Gavin Hayes is going to be there. Samuel Savoie. We could see Frank Nazar down there. Cole Gutman could still be there. It's a little bit of a crowded group already. Colton Dock could still be there already. I mean, there's a lot of players down there, and I don't know if that's actually going to weigh into the decision or not on what to do with Ryan Greene. But I feel like it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him to just wait another year, go and join Rockford the season after that, and kind of maybe get a little bit of guidance from the guys who have been in the same draft class or were in the draft class the year above him that are going through these same experiences, to give him a little bit of guidance along the way. I just don't think that would hurt, but obviously turning pro, I don't think that's a bad decision for Ryan Greene either. What I'm getting to here is it's kind of a win-win in my opinion. I think there's positives to both. And like I said, I do think the Blackhawks probably prefer for him to choose pro, but it doesn't sound like they're forcing him to go and do that if he wants to return to Boston University. I obviously don't know what's going through Ryan Greene's head at this point in time, but based on how he has yet to make a decision, you got to think he's thinking about all this stuff closely, and very curious to see which way he ends up going. Either way, I think is going to be a good situation for him going pro. No problems with that. He's going to be with a lot of Blackhawks prospects who are just making that leap as well. Going to have a lot of camaraderie with those guys and get that taste of pro experience. And returning to BU, he's going to be the head honcho offensively, I would think. The top line center, could be a leader on and off the ice in that locker room as an upperclassman. So we'll see what ends up happening with Ryan Greene. I would guess there's going to be a decision here sometime sooner rather than later. And I'll make sure to be talking about it right here on Locked On Blackhawks whenever we do get that decision from Mr. Greene. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. And you guys see how chapped my lips are? Or are they just me? I don't know. I just have these random thoughts sometimes on a Monday morning. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And also go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Even if you're someone who's regularly watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Please make sure to be constantly downloading all of those latest episodes. It really does help me out tremendously. And also make sure to go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman 2 and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.